Welcome to From Fizzle to Sizzle, how to get your sex drive back after having kids for more satisfaction, intimacy, and joy in your life. I'm your host, Brittany Jones, and today I want to welcome Veronica Monet. She is an internationally acclaimed sexual empowerment change agent. CNN, Fox, Politically Incorrect, Yale, Stanford, and UC Berkeley are just a few of the numerous news and educational institutions that have hosted Veronica for her forward-thinking insights and expertise. Veronica guides her clients to fully realize their unique spiritual, emotional, relational, and erotic path. As a relationship coach, sexologist, and anger specialist, she combines her extensive education with deep empathy derived from personal experience. Personally overcoming incest, rape, violence, and abuse, she has not just survived, but thrives. Veronica is committed to helping others own their personal empowerment and realize the freedom and joy that is their birthright. Veronica invites you to join her in the Shame-Free Zone, which is the name of her website, which I love. And here you will discover her books, Sex Secrets of Escorts, and the soon-to-be-published Love, Lust, and Romance in the Wake of Me Too, as well as her game-changing Exquisite Partnership Formula, a program designed to turn conflict into connection and sex that gets better with each passing year. Veronica Monet coaches over the telephone, via online video, and in person at her Northern California office, and you are welcome to schedule your personal session and experience deep empathy and intuitive insights tailored to you. I have to say that when I met Veronica, I immediately felt her openness and passion for helping people connect with their authentic selves. So I'm really, truly honored to have you here, Veronica, and welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited that you're putting on this summit. I just think it's a really important topic. And I've noticed that, because I've already started posting on social media, that people really like it. I think they love seeing your beautiful, sensuous face.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I've become more open and expressive of that in the last few years. So that's why I'm doing this summit, to help everybody, get more in touch with that. So thank you. I
Totally.
appreciate it.
I mean, that's my whole path, is about sharing what I have actually done. So, I walk my talk, and then I learn things over the years, and I want to bring that forward so that other people can benefit from it. So I'm really glad you're doing that.
Yeah, thanks. So I wanted to start with asking you, you have a lot of experience with transforming shame. And so I want to start with where shame comes from and why it's so important to release ourselves from it if we want to
Yeah.
truly enjoy sex.
Yes. And I just want to let your viewers know there's a couple of different schools of thought on shame. There are some people who believe that there's healthy shame. I don't. I think that's of mislabeling of guilt. You can have a guilty conscience without being shame-based. It's just like, oops, I wish I hadn't done that. Or, oh my God, I really got to correct that. I got to go make amends for that. That's one thing. Shame is a place where there's something intrinsically wrong with me. And there is nothing more core to us than our sexuality. The fact of the matter is, Brittany, you may not know this, but there's masturbation going on in the womb. So we are sexual before we even have our first breath of air, our first sip of mother's milk. And that's a really important thing to know, that our sexuality is core to our identity. So it's also one of the things that we will mature into as we get older. And there's a way in which our sexual maturity is tamped down by authority figures, whether that's the church or the government or the teachers or the parents or community. Society has an investment in making sure that we never really fully become adults. So when we're cut off from our sexuality by shame, and there's a lot of forces out there trying to shame us for our sexuality, it also tamps down our connection to spirit. The ancients knew that sexuality was a doorway to the divine. So if we're going to be ashamed of our sexuality, we're kind of closing that door and not allowing ourselves to fully connect with the divine. Our creativity also comes out of our sexuality. And so if you are shame based around your sexuality, you're probably going to be less creative. So there's a lot of beautiful things on this planet, whether it's flowers or the birds in their nests, or it's the spring. We all love spring. Spring is all about sex. But you also find sexual energy has expressed itself in the museums. You know, if you love art, that's where that comes from. That comes from our sexual core. It doesn't have to be about sex for it to be actually emanating from our sexual energy. So
Yeah. Yeah, I love that point, and I definitely relate to that because I know that when I had my kind of sexual awakening in the last few years, I really felt like what happened for me in the bedroom really poured out into every area of my life, including my work. It made me a more creative, empathetic parent, and it actually just opened so many doors for me. And so I agree with that point, and I like to share that with the audience that it's really about so much more than just the pleasure that we're having in the bedroom, but it's really about getting in touch with ourselves in a form of personal development. So,
absolutely, Brittany. That's one of the things I'm really excited about your summit. I'm so glad you're doing this. I love your message because I think it's holistic, and it's really amplifying the fact that when we have a healthy connection to our sexuality, it benefits every facet of our life.
yeah, it really does. Um, so you were an escort, a high-end escort for many years. And
Yes.
so I had a question about shame and if that is one of the reasons that perhaps a married man would go to see an escort. Perhaps they're shameful about some one of their desires, or maybe something that they can't communicate to their wives, or and not just married men. Maybe there are other men that just feel like paying someone uh, for their what they want makes them more open to be able to share. Is that one of the reasons, or is it something totally different?
Well, I think you're onto something there. It's obviously I was a high-end escort for 14 years, and part of that time I was also a dominatrix. So I've experienced male sexuality in a lot of different ways, and gotten a lot of insights to what drives men sexually, and relationally, and emotionally, and psychologically. It was quite an education. It wasn't what I expected.
Mm.
First time I heard of my boyfriend going to see a prostitute at a brothel in Nevada, I was really upset. I couldn't understand, what are they doing to get paid for sex, and why am I doing it for free? I mean, this was kind of like this dilemma for me. But so I thought that probably men would want to have control and be the center of attention, and she wanted to give up control and wanted to really kind of pay a lot of attention to me and my needs. That's a real shocker. Not what I expected at all. So I
Mm.
had to go take a bunch of classes and learn about sex, because all of a sudden I realized they were looking at me as the expert and they wanted me to be in charge of their time with me.
Huh.
So, wow. Um, so here's how it kind of broke down for me. I saw that some men were ashamed about their sexual desires. And so much so that they couldn't even tell me. They kind of had to hint around it. And I got very good at pulling it out of them, and kind of I became a sexual detective, and I figured out what their turn ons and turn offs were, because they didn't have words for it, and they were shame based, and they didn't know how to tell me. So that part was actually pretty endearing. I just saw a lot of fear, and vulnerability.
Mm.
And the other thing that I saw was power dynamics, where some married men did not want to have certain types of sex with their wives because they would not be in control. And they wanted to come to me to give up control,
Mm.
but they would never be willing to do that with their wives or girlfriends. So I thought that was really sad. That was unfortunate to me, this idea that so many men, I say quite a few of them, wanted to maintain the power dynamic at home where they're in charge. And that kind of goes against the other desire that I found. And it's uncommon that people have conflicting desires. I also saw that a lot of men were frustrated that their wives were not initiating and showing more interest in sex. And I learned that a lot of men were tired of initiating and wanted somebody to seduce them. First time a client asked me to seduce him, I thought, I ran a picture and my phone number. You're here. Didn't I do that? And then I realized, he wants me to actually be the one that initiates
Mm.
and does everything, and then he can just kind of be reluctant or shy or whatever's coming up for him. So it's complex terrain. There's a lot of different kinds of people who go to see sex workers and a lot of different reasons that they do it. But the one that caught my eye was how this sexual expression could not express itself in the context of the marriage and the long-term committed relationship. And that's why I work with couples now, because I'm trying to heal that. I really want long-term relationships to thrive sexually. Mine certainly have. I was married the entire time I was an escort. Didn't get divorced until after I stopped escorting. And now I've been in another long-term relationship for 10 years. And my journey has been about a sex life that gets better every month. So I just, I want to help other people realize that.
Yeah. I think, a lot of times if something like that happens in a marriage, the spouse is just angry. And if I like that you talk about empathy and the sadness that came with not being able to express themselves. And if the spouse really knew that there was this unmet need and was able to hear that, perhaps there wouldn't be these needing to go outside of the relationship without permission, but in hiding or looking for something that they're just not getting at home because the spouse was listening and hearing what they were saying. And so I think it's interesting for our audience to, look at when there's some unmet needs in themselves going on, to be brave and
Yeah.
take a chance at saying, hey, I'm having an unmet need in
Yeah.
a way that their partner can hear them. So that's really an interesting point. I like
Well,
that
and I
point.
and I want to be careful to not, because we've got kind of a narrative in the culture that men go see prostitutes or have affairs because their wives have done something wrong or
Mm,
been inadequate in some way, and I don't believe that that's true. I think sometimes men will see sex workers as a way of kind of passive aggressively getting back at their wife or girlfriend.
mm,
It's
mm,
happened to me. Okay. So
mm-hmm.
that's a really important thing to know.
Okay.
Um, when I was working as a prostitute, and I have all these skill sets, and I'm very open to lots of conversation about sex and any sexual desire that my partner might have had. There was one time we had an argument, and he went out and got a prostitute.
Wow.
So that had nothing to do with a lack of sex at home. It had
Mm,
nothing to do with him being frustrated because he wasn't getting his needs met. He did that to spite me.
mm,
So, sometimes that happens without us even knowing about it. And it just highlights for me how dysfunctional our relationship with shame and with sexuality can be.
yeah.
And it also really brings to the fore the power dynamics in relationships and the things that people do that they don't talk about, but the ways that they try to regain control of the relationship. So, I mean, that's really why I developed the exquisite partnership formula, because I wanted people to be able to have a firm no that was followed by a very juicy invitation.
Yes. So you developed that actually while you were a prostitute and
Yeah,
you were learning about setting boundaries. So
I was. Yeah.
first of all, why are boundaries not only important to intimacy, but they actually facilitate intimacy? So let's explore that, about
Well, they don't
boundaries.
just facilitate intimacy, but boundaries facilitate sexual joy and orgasms. I mean,
Oh.
it's really important that we have boundaries for us to maximize our pleasure. And one of the reasons for that, and it's kind of, I just have to say, it's a little odd, huh, to think that a high escort had boundaries, but I did. I have lots of boundaries, and I never expected that that was going to be part of the job,
Mm.
but it was. So, yes, boundaries make sex better. That's a message I really want to get across.
How
When
does
I
that
was,
work?
yeah. So, what I found is that if you are going to engage in sexual behavior that you don't enjoy, then you're traumatizing your tissues, and that is going to reduce your ability to experience sexual bliss. You'll might still have orgasms, but they're going to be really muted. They're going to be less than what they could be.
Mm.
We really want those tissues to be alive, and they're vulnerable. And that's why you have to protect them from unwanted touch. Really important stuff here. So, to have a boundary around whatever doesn't work for you is really essential. And sometimes what that'll do is that eventually you might even get curious and have some bandwidth for trying a behavior that you said no to, because now you feel confident that you have a no. But if you don't have a no, it really starts to close us down so that we're kind of, let's not talk about it. Let's kind of avoid it.
Mhm.
And maybe I can manipulate the situation so we don't have to go there. And
Mm.
it's just much better to bring everything out in the open and then have a firm no. But your no needs to always be married to the invitation. What are you inviting somebody to do? I mean, if you care about this connection, what do you want to do with them? That's really
Okay.
important to express.
Yeah. So part of setting the boundaries, though, is every time you set a boundary, you build trust in yourself and your
Yes,
partner, right? When
absolutely.
they honor your boundary, then you build this trust where maybe next time you can say, well, yeah, I had a boundary about that before, but maybe since I trust myself and you,
Yeah,
we could explore, walk that line a little bit and see where
totally.
my limit is. Yeah, that's interesting.
Exactly. And the other thing that's great about having boundaries is then your partner knows whatever you guys are doing, you really want to do it.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. I like that.
Yeah.
Um, so speaking of boundaries, why you had said that we feel shame around saying no, around saying what we don't want to do. So can we dive into that a little bit? I understand
Yeah.
being ashamed of what you do want if it's something that's a little outside the norm, and but I'd like to talk about why there's shame around saying no.
Well, okay, so I'm a former escort, former dominatrix, a sexologist certified through the American College of Sexologists, a sex educator, um, and I hate anal sex.
Okay.
So I could feel ashamed of that. I could think,
Mhm.
oh, I'm supposed to be really open and
Mhm.
free, and I must be hung up. Maybe I need to explore this more. And it's like, no, I don't need to do that. So I if I were in a room full of people who had this idea that we're supposed to be open to every type of sex if we're really not shame based, I could start to feel ashamed that I don't like anal sex, and I might
Mm.
start to try to violate my boundary. But I recognize the fact that that's just my personal choice, and I'm entitled to it. And everybody's different, not just everybody, but every body is different. And we all have things that we really love, and we have things that we don't like. And it's just really important to honor that. So, we're not really taught that when we're little kids. We're taught that, well, there's kind of a one size fits all. We're all supposed to like whatever food's being served. We're all supposed to go kiss our Aunt Myrtle, whether we want to or not. So we're not allowed to say no. We're not allowed to have boundaries. We're not allowed to have preferences. And I really, if we're going to unlock our joy and really accentuate our connection to pleasure, we've got to be able to say no. I really believe your yes has no meaning at all if there isn't also an ability to say no.
Mm, yeah, that's that's deep.
Yeah.
That's really well, it's really true. And I think when if you haven't been saying no for a long time, you don't even know what your yeses are yet. And
Right.
maybe you're just confused about that. So learning to say, yeah, no, I don't like that. And even if it's something you've been doing for a long time because it's something your partner wants, having that moment where you say, this isn't for me anymore. Mm, Let's explore what is for me,
Yeah.
right? It can lead
Yes.
to, yeah,
Yeah, and like you said, I really love the way you said that. If I'm trusting myself because I have a boundary, then I can be more adventuresome and try new things.
yeah, yeah. It's those
Yeah,
containers that help us to be a little more free, I think. Um,
totally.
so you have a mission to make consent sexy in the wake of
Yes,
Me Too.
I
So yeah, so and in the free gift that you're giving everyone, you have a way to say no that won't ruin the moment.
totally.
So I want to explain that way, and maybe you can just go through the steps of that for us.
It's called the Exquisite Partnership Formula. It came out of my work as a high-end escort. Like I said, real shock to me that this was going to be a job that involved boundaries and saying no, but it did. And I got really good at it. And it's a 5-step process. I've adapted it for long-term relationships. And I use it all the time in my long-term relationship. I teach it to the couples that I counsel. So I know this stuff works. And basically, it's like this. Let's go back to the anal sex since I don't like anal sex.
Okay.
And by the way, no offense to the people who do. There
Right.
are really good reasons to love anal sex, whether
Yeah.
you're
We're
mouth anal
all
or,
yeah, we're sex
yeah,
positive here. People can like what they like.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And as a sexologist, I teach people how to have anal sex. I just don't like it myself. So, um, if my partner were to say, um, honey, I'm really curious about anal sex and I'd like to have that with you. My response could be something like, well, there's a lot of people who love anal sex. So I totally understand why you're curious about that. And that seems perfectly normal to me. So right there, I'm validating his desire. It's really important. We don't want to shame people. Excuse me.
So that was really brave of him to even ask that, right?
Well, it
Yeah.
is. And
So you don't want
and
to
then
shut that down.
right on the heels of my validation, I'm going to appreciate him. Thank you for wanting to do that with me. I'm so glad that you want that kind of connection with me, that I'm the person you want to try this with. Wow. Okay. So this is, and the very next thing I'm going to say, I've had anal sex 6 times and I hated it. It's very painful. I don't like it. So no, sorry, not available to do that. However, I want you to feel how solid that no is and how quickly I follow it with an invitation. So I don't hem haw around about not wanting to have anal sex. It's not negotiable. But I'm not going to leave my partner hanging there with a no. That's just devastating for all of us because it's really a vulnerable moment here. So I'm going to follow it up with an invitation. And hopefully, if I am in touch with myself and I know what kind of sex that I really do like, then it would look something like this. But there's something I've really been wanting to try with you. And then take a pause. Just let them absorb the fact that they just got told no and invited into something very intriguing. And wait a few beats. Let them ask you, really? What is it? So that's how you can do a no that doesn't ruin the mood. And let's say I had a suggestion that was completely out of the box for my partner. Let's say I said, what I really want to do is tie you up. Um, and they said, no, I'm not into that. Okay, well, now we've come to an impasse. Neither one of us wants to do what the other one wants to do. And that's okay. That's okay, because if we have empathy, if we're not trying to control the situation, we can move into step 5 of my exquisite partnership formula, which is all about exploring what options might be available to us. So partnership is the last step. And that's where we sit down and we have these interesting, intriguing, exciting conversations about our likes and our dislikes. And we do it in a way that isn't shaming, isn't controlling, and isn't manipulative. We're not trying to convince each other. We're trying to be curious and learn about each other.
And that can be really sexy. So,
Yes.
right, even if you don't agree on anything at that moment, like oh, you like this, I don't like that, I like this, you don't like that, then, but just having the conversation could be kind of hot, right?
In my experience, those kind of conversations can actually create curiosity
Mm-hmm.
and a sense of adventure, so that you might
Yeah.
actually be willing to try some things that you even said no to. But you want to make sure you don't rush into that, because we don't want to violate our boundaries, because then we wouldn't trust ourselves when we say no. But over time, when you really start to feel like I can say no, my partner honors my no, my partner doesn't pull away from me when I say no, and maybe I do want to try that after all.
Would this be something that partners like so they get your exquisite partnership, which is your free gift today, which is wonderful. Would they want to maybe practice this before having the
Absolutely.
actual conversation? They could be like, oh, I like red beans, can we eat red beans? And do it in a way that's not even talking about sex that moment, just to practice the conversation for future. Is that
Totally.
something you encourage?
I not only encourage it, but I actually I have couples that are working on that this month. Because shelter in place put a lot of stuff out there, where people are like, "Wow, we're together all the time now." Uh,
Yeah.
so yes, I have couples discussing vacations, dinner menus, homeschooling, all
Mm,
kinds of topics besides sex, using this formula.
yeah, this
And
is
it's really helpful to talk about things that aren't quite as naked and vulnerable as sex first, so you start to learn how to do that.
yeah, that's
Call
really,
Brittany.
yeah, it sounds like a really good system just for anything that we want to explore or, invite into anything in the bedroom or the dinner table or whatever.
I have used it in coaching groups of one time I coached an angry group of renters who are meeting with our office manager.
Oh, wow.
And I used this format.
Yeah, well, this is just
Yeah,
another reinforcement that the skills that we're learning about intimacy and being in the bedroom are really kind of universal skills and can really
they
pour
are.
out. They can
They
pour
are. I
out
got
into
to
the
tell you
rest of the.
something. You can use the exquisite partnership formula with your children. The only thing is that when you get to step 5, where you're going to be partnering, you would take a stronger hand because you're in a position of
Sure,
authority and leadership.
sure.
But to be able to tell our children no about something, and still not shame them around it, right? We don't
Yeah,
want to we don't want to shame our children. We want to invite them to something else, because we're trying to redirect them to more behaviors that we might find more healthy for them.
yeah,
So
yeah. That's an excellent point. I love that. So is there anything else that you're really involved in right now that you want to share with our audience? If say they're not even at the point where they can have conversations about what I want in the bedroom, what I don't want in the bedroom. A lot of the people watching may just be so far apart right now that
yeah,
there's just nothing happening in the bedroom, and the conversation is a source of tension. It's walking on eggshells, it's resentment,
totally.
mismatched sexual appetites, and it's just gotten to the point where it's turned into like a roommate situation.
Totally.
How do you suggest, everybody has a little bit different suggestion of how can a couple who wants to stay together, who loves each other,
Right.
but they're really at this distant point where they're just not really even communicating openly anymore, where do they start?
So there's two tools that I teach, Brittany, and it's a great question. Thank you for asking that. Um, so I'm an anger management coach, and as well as a sexologist. I combine those for a reason. I found over and over again with the couples that I've been coaching now for 15 years, longer than I escorted. And I have found that they oftentimes have resentments and anger that they're not dealing with. That takes a toll in the bedroom. For most couples, not all, but for most couples, if they're angry, resentful about things, they're just going to have a really hard time enjoying sex with each other. Or it starts to kind of just get into a rut and they go through the motions. If we're going to make the sex better, if we're going to bring life into it, we got to deal with the anger. And so I teach a lot of different, I teach anger management but it's just for your viewer, they go over to my website, theshamefreezone.com, and just do a search for things like timeouts, how to take a timeout. I think it's really important that we know how to walk away, because here's one of the things that will happen. We start to get into these verbal arguments with each other, and then we start to tear each other down because we're trying to win the argument. And when you do that, it's going to communicate directly to your genitals that this is not a safe person. So good luck
Mm,
having a great sex life if what you're doing is damaging each other and abusing each other verbally with your words day in and day out. It just takes a terrible toll on the connection.
that's yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't really put that together. That's very interesting. Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah.
uh the when you're having breakdowns in trust and you get to that point where you're just insulting each other, it's not even about the subject anymore. I mean, it started out as something really stupid like, why'd you park the car there? And then all of a
Right.
sudden you're like, I wish I never married you. You know.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I it breaks down the trust, which absolutely, trust is the number one thing in intimacy. Interesting. Thank you.
yeah. So we want to learn how to take time out so that we don't
Okay.
damage each other beyond recognition.
Yeah.
It just happens too much. And then there's a game that you can find on my website called Show Me Your Movie. And it is all about stepping into your partner's reality and
Mhm.
suspending your own biases and perspective, because we're all just seeing through these little eyes, we and this body, it tells us what's going on out here, and this other person that we love is having a different experience. It might be similar to ours, but it's still different. So practicing this empathy where we actually step into the other person's reality and get to know how they see things can start to create more trust. And we really have to have trust and empathy if we're going to have a great sex life.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's great. That's a great place to start. I love that.
Mm.
Well, we are out of time. It goes
Yeah.
quickly. And so I
Yes,
want
but it was so
to,
much fun.
it was really fun. And I appreciate everything that you do. Just being near you makes me feel more authentic and more myself. So I really encourage.
Oh, thank you.
I,
I'm glad.
so, that's just a sign to go to Veronica's website, the Shame Free Zone, and see all of her offerings. And I know she's an amazing person to work with, just in this short time that I've spent with her. And I want to thank the audience for tuning in today. I hope that this brought you tremendous value. And check your inbox tomorrow to see what else we have in store for you so that you can take your relationship from fizzle to sizzle.
Woohoo! Thanks, Brittany.